Hello, and welcome to episode number 305 of the Board Game Barrage podcast, a podcast all about cardboard, board games.
Delicious smelling cardboard.
What?
This game smells so good, Kellen. I'm holding this game.
Excuse me?
I won't spoil what game it is because that'll be a spoiler. But
Yeah,
it
for
smells,
what I'm about to say.
For the next 10 seconds.
It smells so good. Okay, go ahead.
What kind of way does it smell good?
Like in a picture book when you were a kid kind of way.
Smell-o-vision.
What?
A podcast about board games, the latest hotness, and how to have fun with your friends, even when you're losing. I hear a helicopter right outside our window, and it is 9 p.m. on a Monday. That's normal in LA.
That's normal.
That's normal.
Today on the... Christina's here.
Yeah, hi.
Blue Tank. Whoa. Mark's here.
Green tank. Oh.
And Neelan, faithful, is always here.
Orange tank. Orange tank.
Oh, man. I was hoping you were going to go like, the G-string,
What? They won't know the context.
Well, they should have been listening before we started recording.
Oh, my God. I'll keep us together. Today on the show, on the Board Game Barrage podcast, we are going to be talking about board game hooks. Is it important for a board game to have a hook, and how do we articulate said hook? But before we do that, we're going to talk about the games we've been playing. Christina is going to talk to us about Havalandi.
That was good.
Oh, thank you. Mark is going to tell us about Courtisans. Courtisans. I will follow that up with 12 chip trick.
12 chip trick?
12 chip trick.
12 chip trick.
12 chip trick. And then Neelan will end talking about Dune Imperium Uprising. Keep it together, folks. This is the first 5 minutes.
This is the two of them all weekend, Mark.
It is true. Every time anyone said 12 chip trick, actually, even when nobody was saying 12 chip trick, one of us would just like walk around the Airbnb and yell, 12 chip trick. And then the other one would repeat it back.
All right, Christina, what do you have for us in the world of board gaming?
Okay, well.
Yeah, what was the sweet-smelling game you teased earlier?
Oh, it's Havalandi. That's the one I was talking about all this time. And the first question you're going to have when you buy this game is, how do I assemble the airship? That's right, folks. Havalandi comes with an airship, which I'm showing my friends here, but you unfortunately cannot see. So you're going to be flying. What are you doing? Well, obviously, I'm going to get there, Kellen. He thinks I'm not going to say it's the only true and living doctor. He's like pointing to by Reiner Knizia as if I'm not going to say that. Havalandi is a tile placement game by the only true and living Dr. Reiner Knizia. And people who... This is funny because people who have only listened to like my recent episodes, like who have never listened to my previous ones, are just going to think I only play Reiner Knizia games, which, you know, I do. What do they call them? Knizia heads?
Yeah, that's what
They
call
do.
them.
Yeah.
That is what they call
I think
them.
I'm a Knizia head. What do you think?
I don't know. I think you just think he smells good or something.
Kellen, I've never met the only true and living doctor.
He rubs himself against every rule book. That's like
Oh,
his...
God, that's so creepy.
He
Okay.
learned it from Neelan.
Okay, moving on. Havalandi, like I said, is a tile placement game. It is very cute. You are flying. Well, you're not flying the airship. The airship is moving along a triangular track. And this is primarily a 3-player game, which is very interesting. You can play it at 2 players, and you can play it at 4 players. But from what I understand, at 4 players, it's not good. Kellen's looking at me funny, but don't worry, Kellen. I know this for a fact. So we played it at 3-player, the optimal number of players. So we're going to be giving you our hot takes of Havalandi because we did only have this first chance to play it in this Airbnb that we mentioned earlier. Okay, so like I said, this is a tile placement game. You're moving around a triangular track. The way you're moving is each player gets to roll one die. And this can feel very bad at times because you roll a die and you move however many you want to. At the beginning, it's, very open. You have the world. Well, is this... I don't know where this is supposed to be, but whatever this land is, it is a land of plenty. You can place your hot air balloons really not wherever you want. There is restricted placement because that is what the die roll is all about. You move to a section and you can either place in one of two rows depending on where our airship is pointing. So then you place your hot air balloons. There are some special hot air balloons, but essentially you are trying to either create groups in specific areas that score, or you are trying to launch your air balloons. I mean, hopefully you're doing both, or you won't win. But
Unless you're me.
Unless you're Neelan. Did you not launch at all?
I mean, it was like a tiny, tiny proportion.
You had a tiny
score.
launch. One tiny launch.
Yeah.
Neelan's known for
Neelan
his tiny
controlled.
launches.
What was that, Mark?
I said Neelan's known for his tiny launches.
Yeah, has a lot of dry runs, but never really takes off.
All right. So you can score by placing by these pavilions, which are kind of like, it's like an extra special additional thing you can do. But the main game is really building these different groups of your hot air balloons and then launching your hot air balloons. There are also 7 different end game scorecards. You only use 2 for every game. So that will obviously make it a little different every time. There's also 2 sides to this board. So you have different experiences depending on which side you play on. So that is Havalandi. What's our hot take initial experience here?
I think this does a couple of things that make it feel pretty different from the other games. Right off the bat, the stuff that comes to mind is Blue Lagoon, Babylonia a little bit. Your scoring, the way that pieces that you place are connected to each other influences how you score. There's a little bit of trying to spread yourself across a map, create connected groups, connect up to specific features on the map, a la Babylonia, with these pavilions, and you're ultimately trying to get in the way of other players as much as you can as well. It does feel like a much lighter game than any of those, and I think that the die mechanic specifically actually helps for that a lot, because it takes a lot of the deterministic nature of those games where you can place anywhere. It kind of gets rid of that a little bit. You're very restricted by where you can play by virtue of where the die ends up putting that air balloon. But there's something that Kellen said that I liked a lot while we were playing, which is the game is also about setting up your own luck. If you're just doing a large column across the middle of the playfield, then you're going to be able to hit an existing piece almost anywhere the balloon goes, which gives you more placement opportunities because of the way the placement mechanic works, where you don't always have to place in the row if you also hit a group that you're connected to. So there's ways that you can mitigate that luck a little bit, but it still felt a little bit less substantial than those games, but not in an unpleasant way. I liked it.
I agree. I definitely am excited to play this again. I want to play it at 2-player, but, this ain't no Babylonia.
I also intrigued by the other side of the board. It seemed like it would be pretty different.
Me too. Yeah.
I think that there are a couple of interesting little wrinkles to it, but one of the things that I liked was just depending on where the 2 things. Depending on where the airship is at, you're like, okay, I'm not going to get back to that area of the board I care about for at least 6 or 7 turns. And so there is a real, do I want to slow this balloon down to try to Neelan, or do I want to speed up past an area? And obviously you have no control over that, but you do have strong wishes for what the die will roll, which was actually quite fun for what was literally just roll a die and hope it lands in the area you want. And then the other thing is that the arc of the game feels a little different than other games, because at the beginning it is super wide. In the middle of the game, you're hoping to hit these really big point turns. And then at the end of the game, you're sort of just where can I even place? And so at the end, it felt like you weren't scoring as much, but that arc was kind of nice in its own way. It also feels a little like Babylonia in the scoring potential of certain things you touch and you score immediately, but you can score more, and you're sort of trying to think about points at the end of the game or points right now and what's going to be more valuable to you. So definitely not in the S tier on hot take from me, but definitely fun and definitely something I'm intrigued to play a few more times.
We were taunting each other the whole time.
How long does this game run, do you think?
That's pretty short. 40 minutes? Oh,
Okay.
Neelan wrote it down. Did you write it down?
No. But I would say 45. Yeah, 45 to an hour at most.
Okay.
Yeah. Very, very simple rule set. super quick and easy to learn. Yeah, no, I thought it was a lot of fun. But again, I just feel like I need a couple more plays to really get a sense on how it does compare to some of those other games.
I think that, like, what I don't need another play to tell you is that if you would get annoyed by rolling a die and then having to decide from a limited sort of placement, like, you're going to get super annoyed by that. You're going to hate it. You're going to hate it. Roll a 6, get a cookie, don't buy Havalandi.
No, he doesn't mean that. You don't mean that.
No, I liked it. I'm saying if you're that tryhard, don't buy this game.
Oh, I see.
I've never been that.
He's never been a tryhard.
I'm confused
ever.
why you even thought that that's what I might have been inferring.
We're all confused, Colin.
We could move on, maybe. There's some little Mark, just some awkward.
Yeah.
You just shrink that.
I'm noting all the awkward silences.
Okay,
so
thanks.
I actually
Thank
need to
you.
grab.
I mean, it's not.
I need to
It's
grab
not
another
like
sheet of
we're
paper real
awkward,
quick.
but it could be awkward for them when
Right.
they listen back. So it's about them. And
No,
not
I think it
about
will be awkward. For them.
anyone's okay.
I
you
think it's
got it.
awkward
All
for
right,
everybody.
you're up. Okay, so
Yeah.
then you just start. You're up.
I'm a professional audio editor.
That was Havalandi.
So, Courtisans is a game that more than one listener suggested I check out. This is a game designed by Romaric Glanier and Anthony Perrone and published by Pandasaurus, who provided me with the review copy. And the reason I sought out that review copy was that the aforementioned listener said I might want to be on lookout for it because it had Biblios vibes. And that, of course, is all I needed to hear. So, before I get into what I thought about it and how it's similar and different than Biblios, I'm going to go over how to play Courtisans, which I can do because, like Biblios, here's the first comparison, it is a very simple game to teach. So, in Courtisans, you're going to have a deck of cards in 6 colors. Every round, you're going to be drawing 3 cards from the shared deck and decide how you're going to split them up. So you're going to draw 3 cards. One of them you're going to keep in your own personal tableau. One you're going to put in an opponent's tableau. And then one you're going to put either above or below this nice cloth banner thing that comes in, I think the retail version of the game as well, which depicts the 6 colors. So it's like this cloth thing you roll out, has the 6 colors on it, has some art on it. And if you put the card on the upper half of the banner, above the color, it counts as a positive point for that suit. Unsurprisingly, if you put a card on the bottom side of the banner, it counts as a negative in that suit. And that's your turn. Next person goes. You keep doing that until the deck runs out. At that point, you're going to assess each suit, and the way you assess it is very simple. If there are more cards that have been assigned to the positive side, again, above the banner for a color, then that suit is positive and is giving you a point per card that you have of it in your tableau. If there are more cards on the negative side, then every card you have of that color in your tableau is a negative point. And if they're even, that color doesn't score. That's basically all there is to the game. Although there are a couple interesting twists to it, which I'll go over really quickly. One is that everyone is secretly going to be dealt an end-of-game scoring card, and if you're able to meet those criteria, you get some more points. This is like what you would expect from end-of-game scoring cards. So like it might say if you have more red cards at the end of the game than anybody else, you get some additional points. Or if you can make sure the green suit is in the negative at the end of the game, you score some additional points. Stuff like that, just standard end-of-game private goals. The other twist is that a few cards in each suit have special abilities. There are a couple ×2 cards, so they count as 2 wherever you place them. So if you place them in your own tableau and it's a ×2 red, that counts as 2 red cards. If you place it on the positive side or negative side, it counts as 2 for positive or negative. There are assassin cards, which when you place them allow you to discard a card out of the game. There are conversely protection cards, which if you place them cannot be removed. And then finally, there are spy cards, and if you place those in the central tableau, instead of revealing what color you're making positive or negative, you play them face down. So there's a little bit of unknown hidden information when you play those cards. And that's basically all there is to Courtisans. Really simple. So first, let's talk about the comparisons to Biblios. You got some similarities for sure. Similar, simple rule set. Both games are more or less mostly card games, but definitely more than what I would call strictly a card game. There's a little bit more to them than that. You've got the low scoring aspect that Biblio has, where every point feels like it's going to be very valuable at the end, though not to the extremes you see in Biblios, where 2 or 3 points can win you the game. Here, it's not as extreme as that. You've also got the whole draw cards, figure out what you're going to do with them thing. But here's where I want to start talking about the differences. Unlike Biblios, where you're drawing a number of cards and you have to deal with them as you draw them off the deck, as I mentioned, Courtisans, you're going to draw all 3 of the cards you have to deal with at once and then decide what you're going to do with them, again, all at once. The way Courtisans, I think, does it in that way is less interesting, in my opinion, than Biblios, but it's also much less stressful because you see all the information you're dealing with and you're addressing it there instead of like one by one, and there's no push or luck in the way that you have with Biblios. I can see how that would be more positive for somebody who wants a Biblios style of decision making, but with the stress sort of dialed down. Another issue I had with it is the way that the card splitting is handled. So you draw 3 cards, you keep one, you play one to the central tableau, and then you give one to an opponent. But in non-2-player games, you just choose someone, which I think is awkward. It can feel like you're targeting a player if you decide to give them cards that are looking like they're going to be negative at the end of the game. But also, if you don't give someone cards because you don't want to make them feel bad or whatever, then they don't really have much of a chance to like potentially swing a color from negative to positive to get a lot of points. So in essence, like if you don't give a player cards, you're putting them in a position where they don't have much capital in which to work with. And then it's like if you start thinking, oh, I've been giving Neelan too many negative cards. Now I've got a handful of good cards. After I keep the one that I want and play the one to the central tableau, maybe I'll give Neelan this positive card to make up for what I've been doing, earlier in the game. I don't know. It just feels awkward. What I defaulted to doing is just giving the card that I was going to give to opponent to the player to my left in most of the game until it started like mattering toward the end.
Does that card go into like their end game tableau or
yeah, it goes immediately into their tableau.
Oh, that's wild.
So it becomes a scoring card for them immediately. And again, you're playing a 3-player game, 4-player game. There's no rule that tells you like who you have to be giving the cards to or whatever.
Doesn't that make it more social and diplomatic?
It makes it more social. I don't know, diplomatic in terms of like negotiating at the table. Sure, yeah, and that is something. Although I think you can do that in Biblios, but yeah, there certainly is that. But I feel like you can get situations where, for whatever reason, like players don't like a player, or somebody's being made out to look like their leader, and people feel like they need to bash them or whatever. Where you can just get.
I feel this all the time.
Yeah, that's why. I didn't want to use names in that example, but we all know who we're talking about. So I can see a situation where one player is like targeted or whatever, and it might make the game feel bad. I don't know. I've only played it a couple times, but every time I've played it, I just felt that was a little awkward. Not game ruining at all, but just awkward. Anyway, that said, Courtisans, I think, is a fun game. And if you're looking for a small box game that's, again, quick to teach, quick to play, and has a bunch of like rapid fire decisions because your turns are really quick, with a dollop of that take that as you force cards into your opponent's tableaus, or there's a little bit of take that where you see somebody who's going for green and you decide you're going to tank the value of green, which is less take that and more like the game, I think. But if that's cool with you, then I would recommend it. Biblios, it is most assuredly not, but Courtisans is a game that I can otherwise definitely recommend. So, yeah, that is Courtisans. Interesting, as I mentioned before we started recording, the spelling is the way that you might instinctually think it was, Courtisans, but it's not the normal way you spell Courtisans, which is Courtesans. And I was trying to like figure out, is this some sort of like pun, because it made no sense otherwise to replace the E with the I, but I couldn't figure anything out. Anyway,
if anybody knows, please tell us. We must know why this game is called and spelled that way.
I may have skipped the flavor text at the beginning, like the long story of the history of the Courtisans' backstory. So I will review that, and if there is illumination as to why the I is there instead of the E, I'll report back on the next episode. But anyway, that is Courtisans, designed by Romaric Glanier and Anthony Perrone, and published by Pandasaurus, who provided us with a review copy.
12-chip trick.
12-chip trick.
All right. So 12-chip trick is a small box, what would be a card game, except instead of cards, you've got 12 chips.
Chip trick.
And interestingly enough, hidden under the insert for this game is 4 more chips that actually make it to 16 chips.
Chip trick.
Yeah, it doesn't flow.
Chip trick.
And so the game is primarily originally designed around 3 players. I believe this was either a Japanese or a Korean release that was then redone by Mandu, which is the new version that I have. This is a lovely little production with really great poker chips in it. Mark mentioned before we started recording that he has played a homebrew copy of this, which I say sacrilege to you, sir. Like there's Like, look at this box, Mark. There's this cute box. It pulls out.
There's a
right?
little pull tab.
Pull tab, and then you've got really heavy poker chips in here. And I don't know what you were doing, playing with cards or whatever you played with. What did you play with?
Bottle caps.
Oh, my God. Okay, in a game of 12-chip trick, there are 6 red chips and 6 blue chips. The red chips go from 4 to 9, and the blue chips go from 1 to 3 and 10 to 12. If that seems odd, yes, the game is odd. Everyone starts the game with 2 red, 2 blue chips, and you are playing a chip on your turn of any color that you want in order to try to get a score of all 4 chips at the end of the game that is 21 or under. Now, there are variants in how the original game worked versus how this game works, but ultimately the best score in the game is 21. And how do you win a hand or a round of 12-chip trick?
12-chip trick?
In order to win a hand in the game, you have to have played the highest value. And if you play the highest value in a trick, you take a chip, and that chip is no longer eligible to be played, but it is sort of banked. It is a card that you have won or a chip that you have won. If there is a red chip, you must take a red chip. If not, you may take any chip that you want. And then you lead again, and you keep playing. That's the whole game. You try to win 3 hands, 3 rounds. It is very short and small. We played this at the Airbnb. We played this
in a coffee shop.
We played this in a coffee shop. We played this
at the wedding.
We played this in a car.
Yeah, exactly.
Everywhere you could play 12-chip trick, we played it. This is interesting and weird and fun. I don't know how substantial this is, but every time we pulled it out, we were all going, this is weird, this is fun, and then we just kept busting over and over and over again, except for Neelan, who is incapable of busting.
There was literally one
That was a
round.
callback, but no one heard
I
it.
got it. No, I got it.
Oh, okay.
We're ignoring you, Kellen. We're ignoring that callback. There was one round where one person did not bust, and it was Neelan.
That's fair.
That's true.
But every single other time, everybody was over.
Did I do it? I think it twice, right?
No, Neelan.
I'm pretty sure. No, because don't remember. It was the first time we played, and then that one time I turned it around on you at the end.
Oh, you're right.
The other fun rule is that if everyone goes above 21, then the winner is the player who has the highest score. So at a certain point...
So I took the strategy of just like, all right, I'm going out first and I'm going big. And so I just was trying to get like the higher numbers. And that was actually really fun. That was more fun than trying to stay, trying to hit 21.
What did you guys think of 12-chip trick?
It was weird. I don't know. Like, I still feel like almost exactly what you said. Just kind of like, that was interesting.
I liked it for what it's worth. And I think that we have to caveat that, which is to say it is weird. It's hard to say if it really works as a game. But I think that the production value goes 90% of the way to why I feel that way. Like, just having the game be like a handful of coasters and these 12 chips is lovely, and the box is great. We did just break it out on this tiny table in a coffee shop, which is great. It feels like it has the kind of go again quality of like a trick taker or a shedding game, where you kind of just like, you kind of feel like, I think I got it there, then you go again, you sort of figure out something new about it, and I did feel that by the end of it, there was some sort of come around of like, okay, there's 2 viable ways here. Either you see that everyone's going to bust and you go high, or you try to subvert that. And like, whether or not that's very controllable is debatable, but it's cute and it's silly and it's very portable.
Yeah, I think that the comparison in my mind, which is funny, but maybe only tangentially related, is I also recently played Skull in a bar with 6 people, and that also has coasters in it, also has like light, not bluffing, but the sort of double think about what someone is doing. And in this case, like, this works really well with 3 players, so it's a fun little game that you could play in a coffee shop. But it is pretty expensive for what it is, and it is also like, you could definitely play this with cards. Mark, what was it like playing 12-chip trick with bottle caps?
To be honest, it's been a little while, and I don't have a strong memory of it. I do remember thinking it was a clever little quick game. And like you said, I remember thinking like it did lend itself to, repeated quick, like run it back plays. I think we played it, I'm going to reveal something, actually with cards instead of bottle caps. That was a ruse.
Oh my God.
I apologize.
That's even worse.
I know. I feel bad about lying. But yeah, I remember thinking like it certainly didn't knock my socks off, but it was pleasant and quick playing. And it felt like it could be a game to introduce to people who have played just regular traditional card games. And hey, like there's like an interesting spin on it.
Yeah. And I think how it relates to trick-taking games is kind of interesting because I think people probably would describe it as a trick-taking game, which I would say to you, off. No, I wouldn't, because probably the only people who've played this are really hardcore trick-takers. So I love you and respect you and welcome you with open arms. That is 12 chip trick.
I can't do it again. I would just rather play a lot of other trick-taking games. That's my final word on this.
I'm excited to sort of keep this around and just pull it out as like a dumb, gimmicky sort of thing.
Yeah. I do think that the 3-player thing specifically is quite appealing.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay, we also...
Chip. Trick.
She was able to find it within herself. Pull out one more.
We also played Dune Imperium Uprising this weekend, myself, Kellen, and Christina. This is the first time I have played it versus having played Dune Imperium a few times. Dune Imperium Uprising is an interesting thing because it's effectively like a second edition. Oh my God, what is happening over there?
Do it, Kellen. Whatever she's asking you to do, do it.
Do it.
I
Do it.
can't remember.
If I do it, I'll be mocked forever.
That's fine.
I don't remember it well enough.
Yeah, neither do I.
All right, whenever you remember,
Go
you
on,
should do
Neelan.
it. Yeah, go on, Neelan. Don't worry about it.
It's a weird thing because it's sort of a second edition. So it is a standalone game that is, effectively a remake of Dune Imperium. But the weird thing about it is that it is both its own game and is designed to coexist with the original Dune Imperium. All of the cards in the game are wholly different from all of the cards in the base game. All of the leaders, which are your asymmetric powers, are wholly different. So theoretically, you could combine all of the cards and all of the leaders and play them on either board, and that could work. Not really. There are some caveats to that. But it's really designed to coexist with the original and all of the expansions, which is a really bizarre project. But what it is a reworking of Dune Imperium where almost all of the board spaces, which if you need a reminder, Dune Imperium is a worker placement deck building hybrid game. So all of the worker placement spots have been changed, rebalanced, engineered around a couple of new mechanics, which we could go into right now. The first one being these spies that you can place out into various spots on the board, which give you the ability to, when you play into a spot where a spy is adjacent to either draw a card or get yourself some utility to place into a spot that's already blocked. In addition, there's the Sandworm mechanic, which is a new unit type that you can put into combat, which both gives you 3 strength, which is up from a soldier in the Battle of Dune Imperium is typically 2 strength, and gives you the opportunity to double your rewards in that combat. If you, well not if you want. It also gives...
What the?
You have to say it now. You have to say it.
You know it.
Yeah, she keeps trying to remember the Dune meme sound.
That's terrible.
And
That's
she's
so bad.
at one point she's whispering in my ear, I think it's
Well enough. I could hear it kind of in my head, so I was trying to impart that to Kellen to refresh his memory so he could do it.
Oh, good. Great.
But I was listening to what you were saying as well. You're doing a really good job.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you. Okay. Dune Imperium. Uprising. We got that out of our system. It's a good game.
It's a good game.
Yeah.
I was actually shocked at how much I enjoyed this, and it would be more fun to trash on it because I feel like everyone is loving Dune Imperium Uprising right now. I will say that I have played Dune Imperium OG, I think twice, and this now just the one time. I would say the two things that stuck out to me is that A, the deck building felt more fun, and I don't know necessarily why that is, and then B, I did feel less screwed by the special card deck. I felt like there was just a little bit more control of everything that was going on in a way that I found very pleasant. I'm questioning, I might even pick this up, which is like very surprising for Neelan and I to cross over. And the length of play, right? You feel like you're getting a really, really long game, and it's still only, 2.5 hours instead of like 4 hours. I also absolutely destroyed Neelan and Christina in this game.
That is true.
So take everything he's saying with
I played the Bene Gesserit, but I was the Lisan Al-Gaib in this game because I just...
Oh, God.
It does one thing that I do really appreciate, which is it's a game that goes to 10 rounds that you can end earlier, right? And I think Kellen did that thing of like ending it on round, 7? Maybe 7 or 8? I forget.
Yeah.
Which is great. You want a game to like have the
like
tension.
9.
What are you...
It was definitely at least a couple of rounds early. That's what you want. You want the tension of like, is this actually going to go the full 10, or is someone about to like clinch it? And that, in that case, Kellen was able to. Some of this is going to be a little anecdotal, so forgive me, but like I can speak to some of the changes I think help that what you're remembering from the base game, Kellen. It gives you a little bit more mitigation of your card deck. There's more opportunities to draw cards, so you don't get blocked into unable to place workers. The deck feels a lot more synergistic, even off just like one play. I kind of felt like there were more interesting cards and combos of cards in the deck, which I thought was cool. All the board spaces have just been entirely changed. Like it's barely the same board at all. And then just the big swings that come through, like the sandworms and the double rewards.
Oh, the sandworms were the best part.
Yeah, it's great. All the changes feel really, really good to me, which is good because the original game I thought was already very strong. So
Yeah. I don't think I played the original game.
I don't believe so, no.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Let me just comment on the sandworms again. But did you mention that visually it had all the IP? I'm not saying this correctly. I'm very tired, you guys. It was from the movie.
Yeah.
They used like the newest movie. They used the actors' likenesses in the card art and everything. I don't know if you already said that.
No. I think that the weird thing actually that's worth saying is in some way Uprising is the part 2 to the base game's part 1. Like all the characters are literally from part 2. It represents the progression of the story and the cards and the theme, which is a very unnecessary, weird thing, but, there it is.
Actually,
Yeah.
what I was thinking when you mentioned early that, you can use these cards in the early game and you use early cards in this game, that seemed to me like we just want to do something so people who bought the first edition are not upset. Like, hey, don't worry, technically you can use those here, but really nobody would ever do that.
But really, it's a new game.
I think that there's like a little bit of division on the internet about this. I think there's a lot of people who prefer the base game and are just like integrating some of the elements of Uprising into it. And I think the fact that it works in that way is wild to me, but I mean, it does.
What I was going to ask is, if you were really into Dune, based on what you're saying like the characters and stuff like that from this game are from the second movie, right? Mostly?
Yeah, so like you can't even be Paul Atreides.
Right, that's what I was
in
going
this
to
game,
say.
So you have
Yeah.
to get the first one.
Okay, yeah. Gotcha.
And you can combine them and then just use all the characters.
I see.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, right? And there's huge polls where it's like, I prefer the base game plus the Ix, this part of the Ix expansion, plus that part of this expansion.
Take the deck from Uprising and then the Intrigue deck from the base game. It's like the way that people are remixing both boxes and the 2 expansions is really wild.
Almost like
That's really interesting.
almost like original Dune, like how there were like different ways to play that.
Sure,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
It is a Neelan. I read about the 6-player version.
Ooh, yeah. Which is included in Uprising for the first time, for what it's worth.
3v3, Mark.
Okay.
3v3. And each side has a leader who is not involved in the battle, but is able to deploy troops to either of their players that are in the battle. And it like rejiggers the entire board. You have to use the backside of the board because all the spots change. It looks really good.
Yeah.
It made me want to do it like immediately.
Yeah, I would love
when
to
I
get
read
that
about it.
going. That'd be great.
Yeah, this was very fun. I didn't get to finish talking about sandworms, though.
You love them.
No, but the physicality of these pieces, It just feels so satisfying because it's like kind of challenging to actually be able to use the sandworms. You have to essentially level up in a lot of different ways to even be able to access the spot on the board where you can place your worker and then you can add a sandworm or go to a different spot to get a sandworm for your battle, to add to your battle. I thought the battling was really fun. It was always very tense. For whatever reason, we kept kind of, well, not all of us, kind of misjudging who was going to care about these different battles because each battle is more important to some people for the most part than others. And so it's like there would be one where I would just be like, oh, I definitely have to go all in on this. And like the way that the turn order worked and the way I had to unlock different abilities, like I had to make that decision before seeing if anybody else was going to be part of the battle. Right. And so there were a couple of times where I went all in on the battle and then nobody else joined the battle. And that hurts you for future battles because you lose all of those fighters. But I really liked that. I thought that made for really interesting decisions and really tense gameplay pretty much throughout. I really, really liked the battles.
Right. And then especially when the flip side of that happens, when you go all in a fight and then someone, like I think this is what happened where Kellen ended up winning, is still able to overcome that overwhelming force. Like those moments also just feel incredible as well.
Yeah. Neelan thought he went all in and then I was like, and I came more all in and I was just like so sure that I had it. And then Kellen was like, nuh-uh, and he had like 7 intrigue cards and he's like, and here's more power and more power and more power, and he won the game in that
moment. Mark, I had 2 ways to win. Okay.
It
was like 100% surety of victory, and it was economic, or like 80%, and I got to them both in combat. And I'm like, well, there's only one answer here in this game.
Nobody likes a braggart.
Well, that's too braggadocious for you.
That's too braggadocious.
That's just a little. That's the flavor, you know. Okay.
But yeah, I think we all feel very strong about Dune Imperium. Excited to play more of it. Yeah, this kind of reinvigorated for me a little bit. That's Dune Imperium Uprising.
Okay, just kidding. I can't do it. I'm not even in the register.
Neelan did really good.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but every time he sings, it's like a gem. Do we have anything for the mid-cap folks?
I would like to say something about the map.
Wait, what?
Sure.
Okay.
You'd like to sing a song about the map
Yeah, I'm
thing?
going to sing a song about the map thing. You ready for this?
What are you talking about?
Get ready for this. Get ready for singing the
map
song.
Map song.
Map song coming up.
United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru, Republic Dominican, Cuba, Cameroon.
Wow, very nice. Do you guys know what that is?
Remember of it.
Disney, right?
No, it's not Disney.
Yakko's Animaniacs.
Yeah.
Anyway, no. What I want to talk about before we get into the main thrust of the episode is the thing we mentioned earlier, boardgamebarrage.com/map, where you can go and put in your contact information, like your email address or your Discord username, and then...
Or your address.
No
address.
You can now put your address, so don't worry about that. There's no very private information.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
No.
It's a map.
No.
It's a map of where everyone lives.
Well, in a roundabout way.
Really?
It's a map of where you can put your city, just your city, and then contact information. And if you're looking for meeting up with people to play games, and so, board gaming can be difficult because, you have to get other people to play with you, obviously, for the most part. And so this is a way to meet up and play games with other BGBers. And
that's fun.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of people on the map now, but I just want to call out some things because I know we have listeners around the world. We're fortunate enough.
I'm going to do this right now, Mark.
Okay, perfect. Well, so...
Don't tell them where we live.
So I'm just going to say... There are some notable holes in our map here. There's notable like spots where we don't have. So I know we have Alaskan listeners and Hawaiian listeners. So I want some Alaskan and Hawaiian representation.
Is it map or maps?
Map.
Plural?
That's a good question. So if you're interested, go to, like Christina's going to do now, boardgamebarrage.com/map. MAP.
It sounds like we planned it to be cute, but we didn't.
We did not. We do very little planning in general. So I want Alaskan listeners. I want Hawaiian listeners. How many people are there in China?
Oh, it's a survey. Tell them it's a survey.
It's a survey. Hey, people, it's a survey. If you go,
I thought I was gonna open this and see a map.
So there is a link on the survey, Christina, if you want to click through.
Okay. I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, so
But just wait, Christina. If you click on that link at the bottom of the survey.
So Alaskan listeners, somebody check in. Hawaiian listeners, someone check in. How many people are in China? Lots of them.
Ooh.
So I need some Chinese listeners. There was nothing in China. We've got to have listeners in China. Australia. Yes, we have Perth, but no Sydney, no Melbourne. Come on, where's Eastern Australia representing? Please. Not a single listener in Africa.
Wow,
Refuse to
that's
believe it. Refuse
very
to believe it.
Disap-
South America, love Brazil. I'm the biggest soccer fan on this show for sure. One of the biggest soccer fans, many people say, in the world. So I'm happy to have Brazilian listeners, but no other South American listeners. So I need some more South American listeners. No France, no Italy. Come on.
If you live in the U.S., don't even bother. Don't even bother
we have
putting your info
no.
in.
See, I was gonna rake
I'm just kidding.
I was going to rake the American listeners over the coal for the next one, but no Montana, no Idaho, no Wyoming. Come on. None of the Dakotas. We have 2 Dakotas and not a single person checking in from either Dakota. So,
Is that true?
yeah. No Mexico.
That's not true.
What?
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
This is the longest mid cap I've ever had.
This
to
is
listen
important,
to.
though. This is bringing the listeners
you're right.
together.
He's right. He's right. There's none of the Dakotas.
Yeah, not a single Dakota to
Not
be
a
found.
single Dakota.
So, if you're a person who lives in any of those places looking for board game partners, go to boardgamebarrage.com/map and join up. And even if you're in a
Didn't
well-populated...
you just tell all these people that there's no one for them to meet up with?
Because it's hard to be the first person to do it. You need to encourage. So,
There's a lot of Minnesota.
yeah, well, we're strong in Minnesota. We've always been strong in Minnesota.
Always have been.
That's right. Yeah. A lot of Minnesota, a lot of Chicago. You
A
know,
lot of Chicago, yeah.
we're with a lot of salt of the earth folk.
I
That's our
think
show.
From Wisconsin. Kellen was just in Wisconsin. Maybe that's him. Maybe that's his other address.
His other
My
family.
second family in Wisconsin.
So, yes.
All right.
Go to boardgamebarrage.com/map.
Wait, this is fun. I want to keep doing this.
Yeah. This is the new show. This is it. We're changing.
This is the show.
Yeah.
Talking about the show. All right. Let us move on to the main thrust of the episode,
Love it.
as Mark said. So I'm hoping Neelan can participate. But on the show today, we wanted to talk about hooks in board games. And this may be a semantics argument. This may be a semantics discussion, but those...
Oh, we love semantics.
We love it. We love it on this show. So I was perusing the rule book for a new small card game that I covered last week called Of What's Left, or OWL. And it had a section in the upfront, sort of like the object of the game, how you scored the game. And one of the sections it has was the hook. And it literally had a 2-sentence description that
I
said...
just opened the rule book. Hang on.
Oh, she's going to read it.
The hook. An almost shedding/climbing game where players want to have fewer cards when someone else sheds out. There's an asterisk on climbing, and it says, see below for description of a shedding/climbing game.
Now, let's not comment on the sort of quality of the hook and there being an asterisk on a 1-sentence paragraph of the hook. But it did sort of get me thinking, and the sort of comparison that I want to paint here, and I want to be fought vigorously. So get ready to fight me vigorously. You know, the question is, does a game like Dune Imperium Uprising, though high in quality, very, very high in quality, we all love Dune Imperium Uprising, does it have a hook in the same way that with OWL we can sort of say the hook is it's a shedding game, except you want to have some cards when someone else goes out so that you can score more points. So that's like a wrinkle or a twist. I think trick taking, it's really easy to sort of see a hook where we look at Dune Imperium Uprising. It's a very long game. It combines deck building. It combines worker placement. It's all together. It's fighty. But does that have a hook? And my push is that it does not. Dune Imperium Uprising has no hook. OWL has a hook. Discuss.
Why is our house on this map?
Oh my God.
I think the thing that's harder with a game like Dune Imperium is because it's licensed, right? So on some level, that's the hook. Hey, you want to play Dune in a board game? Great. I do think that Dune Imperium had a sort of a hook at the time, which was the worker placement hybrid. The
worker placement deck building,
hybrid
which
deck.
at the time...
Yeah, at the time was maybe a little bit more novel, but at the time, you know, it was a little bit overshadowed by stuff like Arnak and stuff like that. And deck builder hybrids had been in vogue for a little while. But yeah, I do think that this maybe lends itself to smaller games more, because I do think that a lot of the time a larger game just has to be doing a lot more things. But that said, I think that some of the more interesting games to me are where you can just pitch the hook of it in like one sentence.
Are we defining hook as like the thing that makes it stand out from other games like it kind of thing? Is that, Kellen? Is that what you're...
I don't know. We're defining it however we want. This rule book has the hook written in it as a 1-sentence description of what it is, so we can start there.
Well,
I would say that the hook is I think you said it when we were off the air.
I said, is it an elevator pitch? And he said, no, don't call it that.
No, I said I'd love to call it a hook.
But okay, so the reason that I asked that question is because if all a hook is just the literal one sentence elevator pitch of what the game is, every game has that. So that's why I'm asking, like, if we're saying this game must have something that is very unique that you can say in one sentence, and that's what makes it a hook, then I'm on board.
I think one thing that's worth pointing out, because like I don't know why this popped into my head, but like Everdell is as a game, right? Like where I don't know what the hook for that would be. And we've spoken about gimmicks on previous episodes, and I think Everdell has a gimmick, which is having this giant central tree,
squishy berries,
and squishy berries. But I feel like I'm hesitant to call that the hook. Like that's not something that I feel like I would sell the game on the basis of, even though it's what they're trying to sell the game on the basis of.
I mean, I think you could incorporate like the cuteness of it in the hook, but I don't think the tree or like the squishy components would be considered part of the hook. But what about, to go back to Dune Imperium, could you not say something like deck building worker placement hybrid in the Dune universe with a dash of combat? Like
that's exactly what I said to Kellen before the episode. I was like, why is that not the hook? And he said, what'd you say?
He said, we don't want to use the word hook. Or we don't use the word elevator pitch.
I think, well, my reaction right off the bat is that just doesn't feel pithy enough to me. Like, you know, that's not like you are describing the game in as short a way as you can, but that doesn't feel to me like a hook.
I see.
No, but it is interesting.
I remembered what you said. Do you want me to say it?
I'm not sure.
Preferably in his voice. Preferably in his voice.
Oh, I can't do that. He hates when I do that. Okay.
Well, that makes one of us.
He said that basically that isn't something that's going to like convince somebody to play it potentially.
Right.
So like he wants a hook that is just so like you walk into a group of strangers and you can say the hook and they're like, oh, I want to play. Let's play it right now. Right. I mean, I expanded on what you said, but
yeah, I don't remember saying that, but
I made it up.
No, I think, I mean, you know, it's a nuance in search of a discussion here, but I'm not sure because even the hook, as it's outlined in OWL, is made up of other gaming terms, right? So it's similar to how Mark constructed the hook for Dune Imperium Uprising, but there's a little bit of like, and then it gets to like gimmick, right, on the other end, Neelan, where like I think about QE, where I'm like, it's an auction game where you can bid anything you want, ! And like that is both super hooky and also pretty gimmicky in its own way. So is a hook and a gimmick the same thing? I mean, that's the semantics we're here to sort of debate. Even 12-chip Trick is sort of like this game that I could explain to you in 3 minutes, and you got to hold 4 really beautiful poker chips and clink them around on the table. Mm-hmm. And like I feel like that has a smaller hook or a more succinct hook than Dune Imperium. And not to fight on Dune Imperium, we can talk about there's a lot of modern Euro games that are just big combinations and other non-Euro games of other board games, and the hook is, this is an amalgamation of vaguely area majority plus 4 running auctions, and you know there's tracks and tracks and tracks. But even when you get into like train games, right, everyone sort of describes the train game by how it differs from other train games.
Yeah. The thing I'm tempted to think about right now is how we would describe the game when it comes to like our top 50 list. Like, hey, okay, here's the pitch for the game. And like the one that's popping into my head, which forgive me because it's one of my favorite games, is A Feast for Odin, where, big kitchen sink Euro, sure, all of that's true, but everything is about collecting these polyomino tiles. Like everything feeds back into that one system. Like that's the hook of that game for me. You don't have to describe the rest of it. There's 90% of that game I'm not describing, but the core thing that I think is cool about it is everything you're doing is about collecting little Tetris pieces, you know? And the rest of the game is from like a elevator pitch perspective. What is actually good about the game is all at the edges of that description, but like that's the pitch, you know? Like that's the thing that excites me about it.
The thing that excites you. That's what the hook is.
It's interesting because when you talk about hook and gimmick, the difference, like where you draw the line, for some reason, to me, the hook requires description of the game. Like I would never use a component to, again, call back the Everdell description. Like I would never use a component when it comes to a hook, but I would if we were talking about what's the gimmick of the game. I don't know if that's just me where I would separate those or if
so like you would talk about the theme, but not
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, for some reason, like in the Dune description, it felt like part of the hook would be it'd be okay to say in the Dune universe.
Yeah,
but to say with cute meeples or something like that, while those can be gimmicky and those can be interesting, and part of the reason why I would recommend a game, that felt more like a gimmick.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think for many people, the hook is just, oh my God, now I get to play Marvel, or now I get to play Star Wars. So I do think IP is a big hook for many people.
The hook is different for everyone.
Well, I guess part of my question is also, would it behoove board game publishers to write out their hooks in the rule book in this way?
Yes.
Or do games benefit from having an easily describable twist, hook, gimmick, whatever? I think these are really various shades of the same thing. So I don't think it's super useful to be this is a hook and this is a gimmick. But are there games that are popular because they are easier to describe the hook of them than others?
Well, and even teaching a game, if you can start out, set it up by just saying one line, I think that is super beneficial. And if that one line was written for you in the rule book, why not?
Yeah.
I absolutely think that would make things easier.
You know where I would love a hook like that or a line like that is when somebody asks me, when we're talking about what game to play and you suggest a game that you don't know and they're like, what is this game like? And you know the rules of the game, but when somebody asks you, oh, what's it like? You're like, I guess it's a tableau builder, but you do draw. And if there was a succinct, boom, 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 even if it used some board gaming jargon, which it would be an interesting line to draw if a publisher would want to lean into the board gaming jargon or keep it very generic. But if I had something like that where I'm like, okay, basically this is bop, 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 and just in terms of, do we want to play this? Is this interesting to people sitting around the table?
Imagine that was just written on the box underneath the player count, if you're just looking at your shelf and you just want to be, oh, interesting, pull something off the shelf and grab it.
In certain cases,
box.
like Sears catalog or Shuffle and Swing, they could just replace the illustration with that text description as the box, and it would be an improvement.
The game that inspired this conversation does have part of its hook. It says, of what's left, an almost shedding climbing game, which I know is not the full hook, but it is even just having the almost in there, it's kind of huh.
Yeah, what does that mean?
No, and if I brought that to a game night, or if I was looking at games to play at a game night, that line gives me something to go on about what the game is. Sometimes looking at the back of the box, you want to look at the back of the box, but even then, sometimes it goes into the lore, or sometimes it goes too far into it. But just getting an idea of what the game is, I think would be very beneficial.
Actually, on the back of the box, the full hook is written out, and there's no asterisk on this version.
Oh, it's a confident hook.
Confident hook.
I'm reminded I had a chance. I was visiting Wisconsin, and I was in a dive bar, as one does late at night, and I managed to convince 5 other coworkers. I was like, oh, who wants to play a game? And there was probably 4 eager participants and 1 super not eager participant, and I pulled out Skull. And I think that the coasters was actually what got people into it. They all started fighting, as drunk people do, over who gets to be what color. And, obviously I had to give up my favorite, the pink swallows, because that's my favorite in the game, and I was trying to teach them. But anyway, it actually worked surprisingly well. But again, is that a hook? What is the hook of Skull, Mark?
It's a physical hook. You just show it. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to go with the hook of Skull without mentioning the coasters, but I would say push your luck with coasters is probably what I would say. Or maybe even saying simple push your luck with coasters, something like that.
Yeah, no, and it worked. We had one really reluctant participant who came around, and then she had fun just putting skulls down over and over again until everyone else was dead. That was her fun way to play Skull. Okay, so I think that is about going to wrap it up for our discussion on hooks, but what would be fun would be for you to try to write the hook for some of your favorite games and post them in the podcast channel on the Board Game Barrage Discord server. Who can write the best hook? And then tape it to all your board game boxes.
You know what? You joke about that, but as you're saying it, I'm I sort of wish I could just print these all out and somehow attach them to the side of the boxes of my games.
That's literally what I was thinking as we were talking about it earlier. It would be beneficial to just have that on the underside of your boxes or something.
Because honestly, I feel so dumb when when I have people over for a game night and they're like, "Oh, this looks good. What's it like?" And again, it's like it could be a game where I know the rules, I could teach it right now. But when you ask me what it's like, I revert to like, "Oh, well, I guess it's a Marvel game, and like, yeah, there's cards, and you use them to like attack me." But if I had a succinct description, it would be great.
So, Mark, I'm going to give you a hook right now.
Okay.
Right? Are you ready?
Ready?
If my monitors could behave. The hook is amass the greatest library of sacred
Love it.
texts
Say no more.
using only your wits
I'm
and
with
meager gold supply.
Yeah, I know that's evocative. I feel it. I feel it in my bones when you say that. That is, of course, Biblios.
When the queen holds her banquet,
No.
skullduggery is on the menu.
No, is this the King and I or King and Me or whatever?
No, this is Courtisans, a game better than. Well, I can do the King and I.
No, please don't. King and Me.
Yeah, that actually makes more sense, huh? Nope, can't find it.
Yeah.
The king is dead. Is it King and Me?
The King
For
and
the
Me.
king and me.
For the King and Me.
For the King and Me.
Yeah.
Hold. Holding. For the King and Country. For the King and Parliament. King's Bird. King's Forge. Super Dungeon Explorer. Forgotten
There it
King.
is.
Kingdom Forlorn. Unmatched. For King and Country. For Crown and Kingdom. Can you put yourself in a good position to take charge of a weak king?
What? Oh my God.
But can you, Mark?
Speaking of weak, it's so much weaker than the original in so many ways. Even in
This
the
is
hook.
a great opportunity for publishers, I think.
Yeah,
There's a
no,
spot
I
for it,
do.
right there on
I do
Board
love
Game
it.
Geek.
I do love that.
That is going to do it for this episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Heart Society Music for their song, What's on Your Mind, Kid? Thank you to Neelan for our sound effects and our music from the hit motion picture Dune. Please don't sue us. Legendary Pictures. And if you want to talk to us, you can find us in all forms of social media, boardgamebarrage.com, boardgamebarrage@gmail.com, or join the Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. Thank you and good night.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm hot. I'm ready. I want you to save me from myself.
Okay.
All right.
Just so.
Now we got to clap.
Oh, fine. Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Colin, I can't see myself.
Is that important to you?
Well, you can see yourself. Why do you get to see you? But he covered me up and could only see him. Okay, hang on. Here you go.
Havalandi.
Havalandi.
I'll just splice it in whenever you say it.
What episode is this?
305.
305.
Yes, 305.
All right. We ready?
Yes.
Unlike Kellen, I actually look up pronunciations before I do a professional podcast.
Havalandi.
Is it? The show hasn't even started and you're already insulting me, so that's a new record.
Okay, ready, set, go.
Are you gonna? Can I start? Or you?
That was
do
for
you have anything
you.
else?
No, that was for you
here
to
we go.
start.
Hello and welcome to episode number 305